is the Capitol Rundown.
Hi, everyone. I'm Kara Sundlun, and this is where the Capitol Rundown brings you politics from both sides of the aisle that matter to you. We have Themis Klarides for the Republicans, the former House leader, and Jimmy Tickey, a Democratic strategist. Thanks for being with us. So much to go through, as there always is when we get our brief time together on WFSB Plus. So we'll get right into it. Let's talk about the Iranian strikes with President Trump. The big news today, at the time as we're speaking to you live, is well, will there be a ceasefire? Are things going to hold? And did we get the uranium? Was all this the right thing? Themis, I want to start with you. Was it the correct thing to do?
Well, these decisions are always made with a ton of intelligence, right? And there's never, is it 100% right, is it 100% wrong? But I think instead of focusing on what we do not agree on, there's a couple things that basically everybody agrees with. The Iranians have a lot of enriched uranium. Okay, they have that. Whether it's 60%, whether it's 80%, we know they have it. And 90% is bomb-worthy, but 60% to 90% they can do in a week or two. The second thing we know for sure is that they don't like us. We've heard death to Americans time after time after time for decades. For decades. This isn't like you and I don't agree, but I respect what you're saying, and we can agree to disagree, and we'll move on to the next thing. They don't like us. They want us dead. Right? Those are the things we know. So the fact that we went in there, this whole discussion about it was mass destruction, was everything, did we get rid of everything? I don't think we will ever know that. I mean, we won't know it right now, but nobody's gone in there to see what's still remaining. Now, I mean, I believe, based on reports, that we have a significant amount of their nuclear matter gone. Is it all gone? I'm sure it's not all gone. But what it did do is make Iran say, okay, we're going to go to the table. We're going to agree to the ceasefire. Those are huge developments. They are huge developments. Now, that may not stick, and if it doesn't, then we do something else. We go in by air. We go in by allies. We do something. But these things are oftentimes not just a one-and-done thing. So I do believe we did the right thing.
Okay. Jimmy.
Yes, well, first, I'm thinking of the men and women in our services that carried this out and that continue to be in the area. You know, whenever you have any sort of war plans, those are approved by Congress. Now, you could argue that hopefully this does not escalate and it's not warlike. So then you look at the strikes. You know, intelligence leaders were not briefed on this before it happened, and that's something to consider. But it's true that Iran has these nuclear capabilities, and that is a threat to the world. Intelligence agencies have since said after the strikes that it set them back at most maybe a couple of months. So we may not exactly know, but you're already seeing some intel reports come out from those that do track this, that do follow this, that are experts in the area, that, you know, it was at best a couple of months. Again, that's better than them having it, but we need to be thoughtful. We hope that it does not escalate, and there is a ceasefire. At us talking right now, this ceasefire is continuing, but at any time, something could change. We are at a heightened threat warning as a country. We would not want to see Iran, retaliate, and that's why having intelligence leaders as a part of the conversation before it happens, whether or not you go to full Congress, I know members of Congress believe you should, but even when you do these sort of strikes, to have intelligence personnel who know a lot more about this than the president to be a part of the conversation and carrying these out.
Okay, so we'll have to see what happens. I know there's President Trump today saying that it was a low-level, quote-unquote, loser who says that they didn't get it all. So we'll have to see what happens.
You know, I will also say that, you know, to the point of Congress believes that they should be informed, and I get that, but Chuck Schumer was spoken to. They called the Speaker of the House. They called Representative Jeffries, the Democrat leader. They didn't reach him, and then the Republican leaders were informed. And, you know, unfortunately, whether there have been Republican or Democrat presidents in our lifetime, I mean, President Obama went into Syria and Libya without any congressional approval. President Biden went into Yemen. Republican presidents have gone in, and so this has been a source of debate for many years. Like, what do you need to do? But the fact of the matter is, he can legally go in as long as he notifies them within 48 hours, the leaders, which he did, and then after 60 days, he cannot continue unless Congress approves. So again, this is not a Donald Trump thing. This is a president thing, Republican or Democrat.
Okay, so let's move on to home, because we have Governor Lamont making his voice heard in a big way this week of vetoing two bills, the housing bill and the striking workers bill. Let's start with housing. This was a huge controversy. I want to start with you, Jimmy, because Democrats really wanted this, and they thought he'd say yes.
Yes, apparently so. If you talk to Democratic legislators, they would say that they've been working on this for many years with advocates, with the governor's office, really developing a plan for housing. The fact of the matter is that we are such an expensive state with a rising cost of homes. Whether you rent, whether you own, it's only getting more and more expensive, and that really is difficult for young people who might want to move out of their parents' house and get their own place, for older folks who might want to downsize. If you're looking to move, I mean, it is so expensive to have housing, and so we need to do something to add more housing stock to what we've got here in Connecticut. Mid-level housing, more affordable housing, more housing flexibility so that people have a place to stay and a roof over their head. So Democrats were really excited about this piece of legislation. Unfortunately, there was a lot of misinformation, disinformation. It was a large bill. It was debated for over 12 hours, and it had the votes and it passed. Unfortunately, for those that were involved in working on it after the session ended, which we covered here, the governor really took another look at it and saw some things, and I think heard some things from mayors and first selectmen. And while some mayors and first selectmen were at the table in drafting this piece of legislation, ultimately the governor made the decision to veto it. I think the press conference around this really focused on the veto. But what's more important is what happens next. We should have a housing bill. The governor has said that he supports some semblance of this. So what are the areas we can agree on? If there was misinformation, how can we dispel it? We need to do something about housing in Connecticut. We need to have some solutions to add more housing. And so while this piece of legislation was vetoed by the governor, my hope is that, and I know many Democrats who were involved in these negotiations can now spend the next several weeks and months throughout the summer drafting a piece of legislation that he would support so that it can get passed in the House and in the Senate, with mayors at the table as they were last time, continue to make sure that they're at the table and we can have a solution for more affordable housing in the state of Connecticut.
Emmett, from your side of the aisle, a lot of folks were happy he vetoed it.
Well, I mean, listen, while everybody agrees that we have a housing issue in the state of Connecticut, a lot of people didn't agree with the way the bill was written. There were some good parts of it, and there were parts that needed work done. So I think the governor did the right thing. And the governor specifically said in his veto message, and when he spoke to the press about the veto, that he wants the towns and cities to have more buy-in. And I think that that's right, because we all know that when you feel like it's a collaborative effort and people can agree. Now, a negotiation, just by definition, both sides have to kind of believe they lost something, right, in that, to feel that it's a good negotiation, you came to a good product. But he feels there wasn't enough buy-in, and I think that he's right. And I think that he did the right thing by vetoing it, but saying you have the next 90 days to negotiate this and rewrite it. We'll come back in session in the fall and pass the bill, as opposed to what one of the other options was to say, we'll pass it. I mean, it's passed. It doesn't go into effect until October 1st. We'll figure it out after the fact. That's never a good way to write legislation, trust me, because it never gets done the right way, and I think it'll get done the right way now.
Okay, so just so our viewers understand, the bill specifically would legislate affordable housing and making sure that there's more affordable housing, make sure there's more housing near train stations, that sort of thing.
Yeah, it really incentivizes towns to take a look at a couple of things. One is transit-oriented developments, as you said. So if you're on a bus line, if you're on a train line, really thinking about the ways in which we could build up housing around those places where people are already coming and going. And that would make a lot of sense for really smart development. And it also takes a look at these old factory buildings that we often drive by. We have many in the Naugatuck Valley. You know, what are we doing with those buildings? If a building has been sitting there, these old commercial buildings, how can that be reimagined as maybe housing or maybe some mixed-use developments? A lot of work is needed on our housing and on 830G. I think many in local office will tell you that. This began to take that on by having the towns take the lead, but also having more housing options for people to have in their localities.
But what it did was it said the state will make the decision based on geographic areas as to how many affordable housing units each town will have. And then I think part of the confusion was that if you didn't do it, there was no punishment for not doing it, but if you did do it, you would get more money. So that was not properly either written or communicated to begin with.
Okay.
You know, secondly, middle housing that says housing between, I believe, 3 and 9 units, the smaller, not single residences, not 50 unit apartment buildings. It will allow commercial buildings to be developed as residential for those smaller, those middle size,
Okay.
easier. Now, that one of the concerns with that was, and I think that's a great idea, but one of the concerns was, we know when you go from commercial to residential, there may be environmental issues, there may be safety issues. So I think all those things have to be addressed moving forward.
Okay, so we'll see what happens with that. The next was the striking workers bill, and this would have allowed workers, like we saw with Pratt & Whitney, go on strike and continue to get some benefits. That was what the bill would have said, and the governor vetoed this.
Yes. So whereas the housing bill was a bit of a surprise, this was not as much as a surprise. This had passed the legislature last year. The governor vetoed it. As it was moving through the process all throughout this session, the governor had maintained that he would not be supporting it. And so we're seeing this again. So not as much as a surprise, but yes, as you said, what this bill really aimed to do was to level the playing field for workers. You know, there are a couple other states, including New Jersey and New York, that have a similar law that if you were to be striking for more than 2 weeks, that some benefits would kick in, which the hope would be that it really incentivizes the employer to come to the table. Now, strikes that last more than 2 weeks are very rare. We did see one happen this year with Pratt & Whitney. So as a way to get the employer to really work with the employees and to work with the unions to strike a deal, it would really incentivize them to get moving within those first 2 weeks, because that's when you see these benefits come into play. Current law says that you cannot receive any sort of unemployment benefits if you are striking or if you are out of work for these reasons. But again, the governor had maintained that, you know, he was not there on this issue, though labor was and though it did pass, and so he also vetoed that.
Is the fear from, you think, the governor's side and some Republicans, is it just anti-business?
Well, I mean, while it may incentivize business to come to the table, it will do the complete opposite for workers to come to a deal, because they're getting unemployment benefits while they're striking. Now listen, workers have every right to strike. I believe in their ability to do that. But they know that when they do that, that this is the downside, right? There's the pros and the cons. I mean, the pro to them is, okay, they don't believe they're being treated fairly. We're going to go on strike. We're not going to work anymore. So it hurts Jimmy's business because I'm not working anymore. So that's the con to you. But the con to me as the worker is I'm not getting paid. So there should be incentives on both sides to get together and figure out how we can come to a deal, so you can go back to work and get paid, and my business keeps going.
So let's talk about the mayor's race in New York City. We did just some reporting on this for Eyewitness News at noon, and we have a socialist who won, and former Governor Cuomo has conceded, and in fact, Lamont had actually endorsed Cuomo, but they're saying this could be a bellwether, good or bad, for the Democratic Party in the future. So since it's starting, I'll let you take this, Jimmy, first.
Well, it was a big night. I mean, voters seemed like they had no interest in supporting Andrew Cuomo in New York City. I mean, this was significant. There's a couple of ways you could unpack this, but I think, you know, voters are looking for authentic candidates. Voters are looking for candidates that actually are going to do something in office. And whatever you think about this candidate, which was Assemblyman Mamdani, he ran on affordability. I mean, people are making him out to be some, you know, extremist. He talked about affordability and improving the transportation system, and he campaigned hard, and he won. And young people do not always vote for office. Being a millennial, Gen Z and millennials, we do not always vote, but when we vote, we are the largest voting bloc. This really gets us into ranked choice voting, which is very interesting, and that is how New York City votes, using this ranked choice voting. Mamdani created coalitions. He worked with other candidates. They cross-endorsed across multiple candidates. That we're not used to this sort of style of campaigning in Connecticut.
Yeah, they were showing up on TV together with other people.
Right. So it's about coalition building. It's about working together with others.
Sounds like Europe.
Well, it's really interesting in that instead of having a me versus you, us versus them, and really going negative, it really is about building coalitions with others, working together on the ideas you believe in, and have some popularity across all facets, and then rise up. And you often then prevent extremists from doing really well because they're not working with others. But if you can build a coalition, if you can get this broad-based support, you could do very well in ranked choice voting. This sometimes can go on for several days, if not weeks, but he won immediately. At the times the polls closed, he won so handedly that, as you said, Governor Cuomo resigned, and Mamdani had really a big night in New York City, and it's something to pay attention to.
From the business perspective, I was reading people are saying that there'll be flight out of New York City. This can't be good. You know, what's your take? Because we don't live in New York City, but as far as where we're going with future politics, and we might get ranked choice voting, or at least look at it here in Connecticut.
Well, I think there's a lot of reasons why he won. I think one of the main reasons was Andrew Cuomo is just fatally flawed at this point. I mean, he resigned in disgrace, sexual harassment allegations, not tell the truth about COVID deaths. I mean, there are a lot of reasons why he lost. I mean, sadly, Andrew Cuomo was not his father, who was a wonderful man. And I think that certainly helped Mr. Mamdani win. But I also think, he worked really hard. He did things differently. He collaborated a lot more. He did a lot of social media, and he did things right. He didn't just do different things. He did them right. So I think there's a lot of reasons for that. And we didn't even get to the ranked choice voting issue because, he won. I am not a particular fan of it because, a lot of the proponents of ranked choice voting will say, so just people understand what it is. When you go to the polls now and you have somebody to vote for, you pick a person, you fill in the little bubble, and off you go.
Yeah.
Ranked choice voting, you actually have a list. You say, I pick Kara first, I pick Jimmy second, I pick Themis third. You have to actually rank them. And then if somebody doesn't get to 50% plus one, then the person that's last, that has the least votes, just drops off, and then you have to go to their second choice and then add all that up. I just think it's a lot to do. We have trouble enough getting people to vote, and we have trouble enough getting people to vote in a way that's educated, meaning they don't just know your name or know your name. They know what you stand for, they know what you believe in, they know how you voted if you're an incumbent, that kind of thing. So I think it's problematic. The proponents will say that it makes candidates more middle of the road. Right, will make people, the extreme candidates won't necessarily, be chosen. But in this situation, we have a very liberal, self-proclaimed socialist that won. And I think it's very nice. All the ideas he has are wonderful. People always want free. They want free busing. They want free subways. They want free fill in the blank. But where do you get them? Where do you get that from? You're paying for it. And he's saying, oh, just the richest are going to pay for it. Well, you got to be careful with the richest because a lot of them left New York as it is during COVID, and they're going to keep going because they can't afford to live there. So there's got to be some balancing act in middle of the road, and I just don't think this is it. But I think it's going to be very interesting in November because we could have Andrew Cuomo running as an independent. We have the
you think he might still run as an independent?
He's saying he might. Yeah, we have the present incumbent, Mayor Adams, running as a third party. And those what happens when you have a lot of candidates in, they all take votes from each other. Yeah. So there's it's not as black and white when you have multiple candidates in, especially people with name recognition.
Any comments on Governor Lamont endorsing Cuomo?
Well, it's all in the past now, but we have a winner of the primary out of the ranked choice voting. There's a lot of reasons why people don't vote. I mean, I think sometimes they see the money in politics and it's a turnoff. I think they do see a lot of the negativity that you do see in campaigns, and it really is a turnoff. It doesn't make people excited to vote. What's interesting about ranked choice voting is that it gets us beyond kind of those personal attacks, and you have to work with others to show broad-based support. And even though this was a tough campaign, this is New York City we're talking about, it wasn't overly negative. It was really more about who can I work with that's also a candidate, and then communicate to our voters together. It's just a really interesting way that maybe in time people will see that this has some benefits. Some states and some cities have moved to it, not here in Connecticut, but around the country you've seen this. What are ways that we can make politics more engaging, exciting, making it more fair, maybe a little bit more civil, less personal attacks, and more about lifting up ideas that we believe in?
Okay. Well, politics from both sides of the aisle. We're almost out of time, but I'll just throw it out to you because it might be the next show that we know for sure. Coming up on July 4th, we're being very festive, guys.
We are.
In the announcement department for Governor Lamont, does it look like he's running again?
He certainly seems like he's leaning in that direction. I think he's listening to others. I think he is inclined to do it. I think he's taking a sense of where people are at, and if people would be interested, particularly Democrats, obviously, you get your party support and you move on from there. It seems like he loves the job.
He certainly does, and he says it all the time. I think a few months ago when you asked us that question, you were leaning no, you were a slight lean no, I was a slight lean yes, and now I think we're both lean yes.
Okay. So we'll see.
Stay tuned.
We'll see either maybe right before or right after the July 4th. He did say July, so I think we'll see what happens if he goes away with his family first for July 4th, and maybe we hear something. Thank you for tuning in for WFSB Plus, our exclusive live show, The Capitol Rundown, but you can watch it also on the WFSB YouTube page and on WFSB.com. Just click on local news. Jimmy and Themis, thank you as always.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a great day, everyone.